Investors should really consider a dedicated allocation to small and mid caps for a number of different reasons. And firstly, it has outperformed the large cap space. Now, I understand the last 5 or so years have been dominated more by large caps, but if you look back in time, historically, small and mid caps have delivered higher returns than large caps. Yes, they do come with a bit more by way of volatility, but you're more than compensated for it in terms of additional returns. Secondly, it's to do with concentration or lack of diversification in that large cap segment. So if you look at the large cap universe today, it is heavily concentrated, predominantly in a bunch of US names, predominantly in the technology sector. And so when you invest in that space, you are effectively taking a much larger exposure to US technology names. In our segment of the universe, it's more diversified, both across sectors as well as across individual stocks. So you don't get anywhere near the same level of single sector or stock specific risk, which means you get greater diversification benefits. So there are some nuances between small and mid caps amongst themselves, as well as globally versus Australia. So the first I would say is, from an Australian investor's perspective, what we may think of as small and mid caps is very different to what globally is defined as small and mid caps. And so if I just take an example, today the top of the mid cap universe is about $60 billion US dollars, which equates to roughly 100 billion Australian dollars. So when we talk about small and mid caps, we're not talking predominantly about speculative businesses, loss-making businesses, very tiny businesses. By and large, we are talking about well-established businesses, vastly profitable, and have been around for in some cases, many generations. It's a dynamic universe, and so if I go back to say 5 years ago when we first launched the fund, the top end of the mid-cap universe was roughly about 28 to 30 billion US dollars. That is now 60 billion. So you've seen a huge inflation in asset prices. Now the mid-cap universe goes down roughly all the way to about $1 billion US dollars. Historically, small caps 5 years ago would top out at about 5 billion US. Today it tops out about 25 billion US dollars. So almost 40 billion Australian dollars. So there's that $1 to $25 billion US dollar space, which is both part of small caps as well as mid caps. The beauty of our fund is we actually invest across that spectrum. So as it stands today, the portfolio has roughly about half the names in what would be considered small caps, below 25 billion US dollars in market cap, and roughly about half would be purely in the mid cap space.